In this exciting episode of the Perry Pod, Whitney Blake's back, and she's got a new do. She's no longer a restless redhead, but she's no less vexed. It's Season 1, Episode 37 of Perry Mason, The Case of the Black-Eyed Blonde. Welcome to the Perry Pod. I'm your humble host, Jonathan Searcy, and my purpose here is pretty simple. Provide an audio companion to the greatest legal drama in television history, Perry Mason. I plan to do a pod for every episode of the television series, and as time permits, I'll look at some of those made-for-TV movies too. I'll be working through this series in the order in which the episodes were aired. Each episode, I'll give a brief refresher on the plot, and if the episode was based on a novel, I'll compare the book with its television adaptation. Next, I'll list some key pieces of trivia as well as tackle the episode's main theme. We'll feature a Perry proverb, a moment of wisdom from the man himself, and then we'll finish with a post-case water cooler where, just like Perry, Della, and Paul, we can rehash the ins and outs of their adventures. But first, to the law library! Each episode in the Law Library, we return to prior cases to refresh our memories about Perry's past so we can find fresh precedents for future cases. The case of the Black-Eyed Blonde features one of Perry's patented pieces of legal trickery.
What's the name of that motel in Santa Monica?
Seabreeze Motel.
And that's the one. I want you to take Diana out there. She's to register under her own name.
You might remember this gambit best from when Perry trotted it out in the case of the daring decoy, and Hamilton Berger called him on it.
Because this time, Lieutenant Tragg and I figured the way you'd figure, Mason. You wouldn't send your client out of town. That would be resorting to flight. And you wouldn't try to hide him here under an alias. That would be secreting. No, the way you'd figure it, the best way to conceal your client would be to have him registered a middle-class motel using his right name and driving his own car.
This week in the Law Library, let's keep resorting to flight and secreting in our Law Library glossary, shall we? Now, without further ado, let's get to the plot of our episode. The Case of the Black-Eyed Blonde. Diana Reynolds has it bad at home and work. First, her roommate Marion Shaw tries to shoot her.
Diana, I'll give you exactly 5 seconds.
Then the stepson of her boss, Matthew Bartlett, macks on her, and when she doesn't acquiesce, he accuses her of robbery, then gives her a black eye.
Keep your hands off me. Let me go.
Perry's interested, and he finds a case far more sordid than simple domestic abuse. First, there's Diana's boss, Matthew Bartlett, who alienated his son, who subsequently died in the Korean War. Matthew Bartlett then tried to find a new son via a second marriage. The result, a loveless partnership and guardianship over Ace Schnooknick and Black Eye giver Tony Davis. In addition, it seems Bartlett's daughter-in-law, Norma Bartlett, née Carter, had a kid, one Bobby Carter.
Oh, there, young fella.
Hello,
What's your name?
Bobby Carter.
Amen, you said it, kid. Bartlett wants to be the kid's guardian. You know, redeem past sins and all that. Diana's other problem? Her erstwhile roommate Marion winds up dead on the property of Norma Carter. Oh boy.
Her name is Marion Shaw. She shared an apartment with Diana.
Excuse me, Lieutenant. The woman who lives here just came home. She's been out shopping all morning with her kid.
Where is she?
Seeing the boy gets his nap. I told her to go ahead. The boy was frightened. Her name is Norma Carter.
Tony Davis gets called as a witness in the prosecution's narrative of the murder. He was the reason Diana killed her roommate. Perry plays with him, but doesn't go for the kill. Here he explains why.
Why didn't you ask about the letter?
I was afraid to. He denied there ever was one. When I call him a liar, I want to be able to prove it.
What is Perry hiding up his sleeve? Well, Marion apparently kept a diary, and that means Della and Paul need to go undercover looking for it.
How would you like to take me to dinner?
It'll be a pleasure.
Of course, we'll have to make a detour on the way.
What kind of a detour?
I have to pick up a dress for Diana Reynolds.
At her apartment?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the cops have taken the place over.
I know. Of course, it may take me a little while to find something suitable.
Just what do I do in the meantime?
Oh, I thought you'd find something to keep yourself busy. Incidentally, Marion Shaw kept a diary.
Unfortunately, the police have already nabbed it. And surprise, surprise, they've interpreted it incorrectly. They see the diary as exposing a rift between Marion and Diana over Tony. But the truth? Bobby Carter was Marion's, not Norma's, child.
July 27th. Today I made the decision. I know Norma will do everything she can for him. Once I get on my feet again, I want to forget all about St. Catherine's.
Perry confronts Norma Carter, so she decides to blow town in a truck straight out of Ford's Beverly Hillbillies line.
July 27th. Today I made the decision. I know Norma will do everything she can for him. Once I get on my feet again, I want to forget all about St. Catherine's.
Post-crash, she gives a dying declaration. Crucially, she leaves Bobby's true parentage out of it. The episode ends with Papa Bartlett playing with his grandson and saying silly things like this.
I tell you, Blood will tell every time. The spitting image of his father.
Don't say that kind of stuff in a Perry Mason episode, man. I wouldn't be surprised if little Bobby gets accused of murder after being blackmailed about his parentage. Let's just hope Perry's still around to defend him, should that occur. The 1944 novel on which this episode was based has some significant differences. Let's count them. Number 1, Diana Regis, the defendant in the case, has a past. She's suspected of killing her first husband. No one really knows for sure whether it's true. Number 2, that fact comes from Mildred Danville, who is the murdered woman and Diana's roommate, who kept it in her diary. The difference in the book? Perry and Della grab the diary before the cops can get it. Della hides it in a loaf of bread and then grabs the loaf out of the trash can before the garbage man can incinerate it. And Perry mails the diary to himself after they've read it, so the cops can't nab it until the case is over for fear of tampering with the mail. Brilliant! Number 3, Helen Bartzler, the Norma Carter character, hates her father-in-law and keeps Mildred's kid, just like in the show. But her motives aren't based in greed. It appears it's all about hatred for her. She just wants her father-in-law to suffer. Number 4, we get a bit more characterization of the schnooky son, stepson that is, Carl Fretch in the book. He's suspiciously declared 4F so he wouldn't have to fight in World War II. And at 22, he feels himself the next great actor. What I love is that when he tries to get handsy with a Paul Drake plant, she gives him a sweet shiner in repayment. Yes! And number 5, the murderer in the book doesn't even appear in the show. His name, Frank Glenmore. He's Jason Bartzler, aka Matthew Bartlett's, business partner. He's been stealing from his boss in the appearance of a possible grandson, supply him with additional blackmail possibilities. Of course, Mildred objected, and that's why Glenmore killed her. Now, let's get trivial, shall we? Each episode in our trivia section, I give you 3 takeaways. A Paul is a subject worth investigating more. A Della is something about a particular character in the story. And a Perry is something we learn about our intrepid hero. Our Paul this week concerns the photo of Robert Bartlett. Here's your Paul prompt. Who is the actor whose photo graces the mantle of Norma Carter? Side note, it's kind of funny to imagine it being the autographed glossy of a C-grade movie actor, which it is, instead of young Bartlett. Our Della this week is Diana Reynolds, played by Whitney Blake, our first repeat defendant. You'll remember that Blake played Evelyn Bagby in episode 1, where she was also in the title, also because of her hair, only this time it's a different color. You may also remember her because she's given to crying.
And I saw my car. And I saw Marion. And...
Whitney Blake was born in California, the daughter of a Secret Service agent who helped protect Woodrow Wilson. In the 1950s, she appeared in numerous productions at the Pasadena Playhouse, the stomping grounds of Lenore Shane Wise, who we met in the case of the Fiery Fingers, and that crew, which included Raymond Burr. She never appeared on Perry again after the case of the Black-Eyed Blonde, but that's because she went on to bigger and better things. 4 seasons as the mother on Hazel, check. Creator and writer for the sitcom One Day at a Time, check. 3 children, including actress Meredith Baxter, check. She died from esophageal cancer at 76 years of age. Our Perry this week involves Perry's upbringing. While getting a little too familiar at first meeting with young Bobby Carter, Perry tells the boy about his own past.
I remember when I was a little boy, we used to have some chickens. Of course, they weren't as nice as yours. Every day, I remember, we used to go looking for eggs. And one day, you know what I found?
What do you think you're doing?
Well, hello there.
Wait, what did he find? A solid gold egg? A copy of Blackstone's commentaries? A live chicken? Perry leaves us hanging, man. The theme for this episode is suffering. Clown Tony Davis has this to say about Marion.
Oh, when are you going to grow up? Don't you know some people are born to suffer?
Well, Marion surely is suffering if she is in any way emotionally committed to Davis. And of course, she does end up getting murdered. But she's not alone in the suffering boat. We got Diana, who's going to be working through trauma issues as she tries to be mama to young Bobby Carter.
I think you'll need someone to help take care of Bobby. After all, he's just a child.
You're right. I'd spoil him pretty bad. We do need a woman around here. You think Diana would be interested?
Well, she's very fond of him.
It's a deal if she'll have us.
Here's a piece of advice, Diana. Don't marry Matthew Bartlett. Don't do it. Then there's Norma, who I feel sorry for because even though she's a murderer, even though she pawned off her kid for $100,000, in her final moments, she has to be gawked at by a bunch of law enforcement officers. No one around who cares about her. And she kind of does the right thing. Then poor Bobby. I'm serious when I say this kid is a Perry Mason defendant waiting to happen once the blackmail sheets get a load of his parents' situation. And finally, could someone please make Tony Davis suffer a little more? At least his scheme gets exposed and he's out on his ear, the whiny little twerp. I hate to break it to him, but in Perry's world, everyone's born to suffer, at least a little. The murder rate in LA is sky high, and every case has at least 3 or 4 potential suspects. That's no way to live. Now it's time for a Perry proverb. Perry delivers this episode's proverb in conversation with money man Matthew Bartlett.
Well, for one thing, I have an old-fashioned idea that money can't buy everything.
Of course, Perry lets Bartlett keep the boy scot-free at the end of the episode. What exactly was the protocol there with DSS, huh? The proverb identifies Bartlett's problem, though. He thinks money solves everything. Let's hope, for little Bobby's sake, that he's matured. Now let's grab a swig from the water cooler.
There is one thing I don't understand.
Go on, Paul.
Our research prompt from the last episode involved voir dire. What exactly is voir dire examination, we asked, and who would Perry be examining to figure out the relevancy of the home movies from the case of the prodigal parent? How exactly is Perry using the phrase? Myra Caraway, my aunt, offers this. Perry told the judge he's trying to show the mental attitude and bias of the witness, Irene Colaro. She has knowledge of the people and an emotional attachment to them that she hasn't revealed that could affect her testimony. And John Searcy, my father, adds, I think Perry would examine Ethel Harrison and Lorraine's mother at a minimum to learn more about what happened and what was said on the home movie. Joseph Harrison was of no value to Perry's defense because of his tight-lipped approach to protect Ethel. Perry is using the term voir dire because he is attempting to determine the veracity and relevance of the movie as evidence. In this case, it turned out to be great evidence for the defendant. Right you are. Thanks to both of you for that contribution. As always, I'd love feedback about this particular episode or the podcast in general. Was there something about this episode that you'd like to comment on or something that you'd like to correct? You can leave comments on the pod's website at theperrypod.libsyn.com or email me at theperrypod@gmail.com. You'll find those links in the show notes. All Perry Pod episodes are now available via Spotify, YouTube, and iTunes. Thanks again for joining me on this pod journey. Join us next time where we get to see Perry lose? It's the case of the terrified typist. Join me, won't you? Until then, this is Jonathan Searcy saying, keep on walking that Park Avenue beat!